When large jobs require moving massive amounts of snow, get the work done quickly and efficiently with the Western Pile Driver and all-new Pile Driver XL pusher plows, both featuring Trace Edge technology. These pushers scrape down to the pavement with an advanced cutting-edge system that has independent 2-foot sections that move vertically, oscillate, and trip. Get more jobs done faster with the Western Pile Driver lineup of pusher plows.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. You know there's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey with your host, Dave Westcott. The Entrepreneurial Journey is a weekly podcast that streams live every Tuesday at 9:15 a.m. Pacific on Dave's YouTube channel and LinkedIn profile. Now here's Dave with this week's episode.
Good morning and welcome to the Entrepreneurial Journey. I'm your host, Dave Westcott, and I have with me this morning special guest, Steve Wheatcroft. Good morning, Steve.
Hey, Dave, how you doing?
I'm doing
Good to see you.
I'm doing outstanding, man. So you are founder of ULS, co-founder of Spectrum Equipment.
Yeah, exactly. That's my handles, I guess.
What is that exactly?
Well, I started ULS back in 1989. I was attending the University of Calgary on a hockey scholarship there, and actually taking a business degree, which I always, my family is very entrepreneurial, so they were always like, don't go to school to start a business. But I thought because my grandpa was always like, university educations are useless. So he was kind of a hard-ass guy, hard worker. But school was, luckily for me, was free and paid for by playing hockey, which was really a good experience for me. So I started, ULS in 1989, and that company grew until, I just recently left in late 2023, 2024, kind of wrapped it up there. And then in 2015, I started another company called Spectrum Equipment, which I partnered with a former top sales guy in North America for Caterpillar. And we took a bunch of Caterpillar equipment that we had and started kind of a rental company out of it, but also added a lot of snow and ice management equipment onto it too. So there was 2 sides to the company. One rented and sold heavy equipment. Calgary's, Alberta's kind of, I like to call it the Texas of Canada. And although the oil industry and energy industry in Canada has been pretty decimated by our government, but I'll leave that for another talk, Dave. But so we did a lot of renting of heavy equipment and sales, and then as well, we had a snow and ice management division. So we sold and rented melters. And snow melters and all different types. So we were the rep for Metal Plus, Equifab, Western. We did some work with Douglas Dynamics. So we had a lot of the big snow guys with us. So and Western Canada, as you'd know, I know you're in the Northwest US, and we're kind of, it's a little bit different business environment the farther you go west. And that Western Canada was kind of just a dead zone for a lot of these manufacturers. They never planned to be out here for a long time. So they just kind of handed me the reins. Whether that was a good idea or not, I don't know. And then I ended up selling Spectrum to my partner and moved on from that company as well, although I still consult to them and help them with placing of mostly snow and ice management equipment.
Oh, that's cool. So you've built some businesses, you've been successful, and this wonderful company that you built, ULS, you were doing over $30 million a year in sales from snow, and was landscape included in that or just snow?
No, so when I sold the business to private equity so it would have been about 2019 when I sold, we were right around the $31 million mark out of 2 locations, and about 50% of that revenue was snow and ice management. The other 50% was made up of, what people would be called green services. So a lot of maintenance contracts. We did also do quite a bit of construction. We had moved out of we had some really big landscape construction jobs through the years leading up to that. But in about 2017, I moved away from doing really large landscape jobs for, contractors like PCL, Stuart Olson,
Sure.
that type of, general contractor, just because I didn't like the payment terms, I'll be honest with you. Like,
Yeah.
When Calgary flooded in 2013, our zoo was on an island, it was decimated, and we rebuilt the primate facility. We built a new panda facility, and we rebuilt the far east end of the island that got blown out. I mean, city of Calgary, downtown Calgary is under 4 feet of water for months.
Wow.
And that took us about 450 days to get paid on there. And, I get a plaque from the mayor of Calgary saying, "Oh, thanks for all the help and everything." Well, by the time we got paid on these jobs and ran the course of the gauntlet with these large contractors, basically our profits were very low. So we quickly moved away from that. And really start to understand, how important it is to look at payment terms in contracts. And that's one thing that really hurts a lot of contractors. They get excited about, maybe signing, like let's say you're a $10 million company and you add like a $2 million a year contract with a municipality or government or a large, private organization. You really have to be aware of contract payment terms and how does that affect cash flow.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that a lot of companies get themselves in trouble with when they try to make that.
Yeah.
What I would say kind of, I call it hunting elephants. So when you go and get bigger contracts, how you get paid is really important, and how you're going to cash flow that. Right.
Yeah. That is so
Big
spot on. That is so true. So these landscape projects that you were doing, these are multi-million-dollar projects.
Yeah, that one that we did for the Calgary Zoo, which was really through the city, which was really, was held by a large, general contractor, was right around a $6 million contract on one site.
Yeah, that's
and as
awesome.
you know, I like to joke about it, but it is kind of a problem, is that landscape companies are typically the last ones to leave the site. So, when everybody else gets called back to fix up something, or, stucco has to be down on a building, or new windows, all the windows cracks, they just walk over the landscaping, and there's a lot of issues with trying to get that final sign off because there's so much traffic on a site, especially on large commercial sites. So you have to be aware of that too, because I always laughed, well, let's just blame the landscaper over and over again. It's always his fault, right? Yeah. It's always the landscaper's fault that the project is
always
done.
Always the landscaper's
like we're the
fault.
last ones in. Yeah. And on contracts that go sideways, they typically, landscapers and asphalters typically get stiffed on their bills. We're the last to get paid.
Yep.
On these bigger projects, right? So there's a lot of issues, and then you overlap, weather issues, where we perform services. We could be shut down as early as end of October, and if we have 5% of the site done there, we'd get that. Well, we won't pay you till the spring till you get it done. Now you're sitting on 5 to 6 months of not getting paid, but maybe you only have 5 or 6 more trees to put in and stuff like that. I mean, I got to the point, honestly, and this is a true story, where I went to the tree farm and just bought trees, and we cut the root balls off and poured them with concrete and stuck the tree in the concrete so the tree would stand up till the spring. And then when it was dead, we go, oh, they're warranted, and we'd actually put rebar in them, so you just pick them up with a loader and lift them out, and because the trees were just held up with concrete.
First of all, that's a great idea. That's a great idea. I want to say that I like the way you're thinking out there. Definitely very innovative. And I agree on the big projects. You know what? I stopped doing big projects myself. And I, for just very similar reasons, where 6-month payment terms, 90-day payment terms, 120-day payment terms, and these projects are very expensive. Plants are very expensive. And when your average install job is, $2.3 million, and you've got to front all that labor and all that equipment and all that material, you know what? They don't pencil, because you can bang out, 10 or 15, $65,000 jobs, get half down, get paid when the job is completed, and you're in control of the environment, and you can bang it out much quicker. So I agree 100% with that move.
Yeah. And I think a lot of contractors too, the revenue numbers, I always say top line vanity, bottom line sanity, and cash flow is king. And a lot of contractors, and it doesn't really matter what business you're in, but everybody talks about revenue. If you go to a conference or something, you sit around, everybody's like, how big is your company? And that's the questions that are asked, and you throw out revenue numbers. That's what everybody does. But I always say I want to find the guy that tells me, like, I got a $4 million business. I bottom line $2 million a year. Me and my wife only work 6 months of the year. We spend the other 6 months down in Palm Springs playing pickleball, and all my kids are paid. Their university was paid for, and they're all moved out of the house. Like that. That's the guy that's successful. Not the one that has $30 million of revenue or whatever. When I left the company, we were a $100 million company, which would have placed us probably in the top 3 in Canada, as far as companies. And we did okay. But, that jump of, let's say from 30 million to 100 million really wasn't as profitable as, let's say, when we were on a percentage basis, as when we were a 16 or $17 million company. So you've got to understand that, again, that top line's a fun number to go after. It's a vanity number. It's an ego number a lot of times. But you got to be responsible, and you have to understand that at the end of the day, companies are only worth the cash they produce, and they're only worth what they make bottom line. And that's a better way to structure a company. And if that means you've got to remove some services, or you have to like pivot a little bit, then, I really think that that's a smart thing to do. Especially now, I see a lot of businesses going to niche businesses where they maybe only do 2 or 3 things really well. And there's enough revenue pool there to build, a nice revenue base. And they're typically are very successful, successful companies.
That's great. That's great advice. I heard you speak doing a keynote at the SIMA Leadership Forum in Vail. You killed it, by the way. That was awesome. I loved it.
Thank you, Mike.
I think you were my favorite speaker of the group, so I think that was awesome. One of the things you had talked about there was this idea of, building a $50 million company. Think like a $50 million company, 50M, I think. And you started placing this around, and you started kind of making it the mantra, like, we got to think bigger. We got to think bigger. For the entrepreneurs on the call, for people looking to, grow their business, I hear what you're saying, about we've got to have profit, right? We've got to have cash flow. And I agree 100% on those. But for those who do want to scale, and those who do want to grow, and they're thinking about achieving things that you've achieved, what is that mindset change to go from, I don't know what it was, 15 million to 30 million, 30 million to 50 million. What were the big changes and the big thinking changes that you put in place with your team? How did you do that?
Yeah, no, I came up with that concept like $50 million. I just called it 50M for thinking for the longest time. It was more of a, a way to build curiosity in the company. And it didn't take very long. I mean, people are smart to figure out what I was saying. And then, when I got into this town hall that we had, it was like, Steve, we know what it is. It's $50 million thinking. And I said, yeah, just don't talk to me unless the concepts or theories or basis of your thinking is based around what a $50 million company would need to do. Like, how are they structured? What's their procedures like? And really that was, at the time, things were getting so complex, and this is what people need to understand about leadership. It doesn't matter if it's a captain of a hockey team or if you're building companies or whatever it is, you have to understand you can only lead to your capacity. So a lot of people, they sit and they go, I want to be a bigger revenue company, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But they have to understand, they look at themselves, like, can you really do it? And a lot of the times, if you're honest with yourself, it might be, no, I can't. But can you do it by inviting others to join you? And that's a big mental step for people, because they think it's all about them. And you can get very inward thinking on this, and you can like sit there and just oscillate and spin on this one point, that how do I do this? How do I do this? Well, for me, this, 50M thinking was an open invitation to have everyone in the company think bigger and be bigger. And then what that did, it kind of was like, it's almost like when you go to pop popcorn, right? You have this pan and you put the popcorn in there, and it sits there and you watch it. And as the heat starts to build and the energy, all of a sudden, bang, 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 a few of these kernels start to pop. And that's what happened in our company. Was I said, I want everybody to think in a way a $50 million company would think. And that opened up these explosions of creativity and people wanting to join and help me. So it was kind of me saying, like, I don't have this figured out and we need to do it as a group. And it was an open invitation, and not an invitation. It was like, I'm not listening to you, and we're not having meetings, and you're not invited to come to my office anymore. And we're not going to have coffee and talk about bullshit that doesn't get us to 50, I'm thinking. So it became kind of a fun thing in a way. And it just was an invitation for people to be creative and understand that it was okay to think bigger and be bigger. And that built a lot of leaders, and I was in Boston last week and attended one of Mark Bradley's mastermind sessions. And, this leader of leaders came up, and that's what, if you want to be a $100 million company, you can't lead a $100 million company. You have to lead a group of leaders that want to have a $100 million company. So build a culture of you need to be the leader of leaders. So I was very fortunate to have brought into my company some people that really got this concept and stepped up and treated ULS like it was their own, and that they wanted to grow it and that they wanted to be part of the journey. Even when I got to the point of selling to private equity, it was a group decision that everybody wanted to do at the higher end of the company, that, they wanted to participate because they knew it was a way to leverage up higher revenue and grow the business. Now, it wasn't as smooth as I'd hoped, but, it did get us to a spot that there's not a lot of people that can say they do $100 million a year in revenue. Yeah. It's not easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, that's a fantastic accomplishment. Congratulations on that too. For anybody that's thinking about selling their business to private equity, what's a couple of things they should be looking out for?
Well, and this is just, again, it's my opinion, and I'm not going to change. It's my opinion, and I'm going to stand by it. And I think that, when you go to sell your business or want to sell your business, you have to ask yourself why you want to sell it. And that's a problem that a lot of people have. They aren't honest with themselves. Now, if you're someone that says, I want to sell my business because I want to do something else, or I'm tired, or I don't understand how I'm ever going to get out of this. And with the cost of equipment in the landscape or construction industry in general, most owners put a lot of their money back into the company. I mean, you can lend to get the equipment, but you still have to have a certain amount of, debt to equity ratio. So you have to put some of your own money in sometimes. And sometimes it's hard to always continually go home and tell your wife or your husband, well, we're not going to get that cabin, or we're not going to go on that holiday because I'm growing the business.
Yeah.
So some people just get tired of it and they want to move on. And if that's the case, you want to go, I think private equity is a great place to sell, because they have the ability to do a deal. Like, you can talk to people who want to buy your business, but do they have the cash to do it? And private equity, they have their means to make sure that you get a check and that you can move on. And my advice would be, make sure you understand the process and make sure that you have good counsel and good advisors. And that could come in the form of lawyers or your accountant, tax planning, or just somebody, an advisor that's been in the industry or went through it. I mean, I've talked to many people on this subject. Now, good reason to engage with private equity. Now, the bad reason to engage with private equity is this. You're sitting there and you want to grow your company.
Yep.
You want to get bigger. So you just think that there's I could partner with this, and that's how private equity puts themselves. We're going to be a great partner for you, right? And we're going to partner, and we're going to be a people forward company, and we're going to help you grow it. And, we've got all these great ways to help you, and we give you access to capital. And that's why you want to sell to private equity. Then my advice would be, don't do it, because it's not going to turn out that way. What you have to understand with private equity is, when you sell it to them, even if you still own shares and you roll some of your shares into the fund, and you own still part of your company, you're not a majority owner anymore, and you don't own it. And you have to understand it's not your company anymore. So you change your mindset, well, not your mindset, but what happens is you go from being an entrepreneur to being what I call a corporate CEO, or working for a bigger organization. And for most of us, and Dave, I know you would feel this way.
Yep.
It doesn't feel comfortable. And I always say it's like when skinny jeans came out, right? Like I had to try them because, skinny jeans were all the rave. So I got myself a pair of Vans and some skinny jeans. Well, I played hockey for a lot of years, so I got pretty big legs, and I put these jeans on, and I'll tell you, they bound up in a lot of places. They were uncomfortable in the crotch and the thighs, everywhere. And to me, that's when somebody asks a true entrepreneur to become a corporate senior manager, let's say C-suite positioned employee for private equity, it doesn't feel good. So don't expect it to feel good. And that's not probably a good reason to sell. So whether private equity is good or bad, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with yourself and what you're trying to get out of it. And this is where, people make smart decisions in this. If it's time to get out, it's a great way to get out. If you want to do it to try to leverage yourself up and build a company, I don't think it will be an enjoyable adventure for you.
Yeah.
Not just being honest.
Right.
Yeah.
I've heard that from many people. In fact, I don't know that I've ever spoken to somebody that I know who has had an enjoyable private equity experience. I can't think of a single one.
Well, yeah, and when it is enjoyable, I've talked to guys that are super excited about it, and it's been very enjoyable because they got a check and they got out.
Yeah.
And then they look at it, well, that's great. It was a great experience for me. Well, that's great because you didn't have to stick around there and then try to still build your business.
Yeah.
With what I would say would be, kind of some golden handcuffs put behind your back. You're slapped on the handcuffs. So again, it's, private equity is, private equity, some of the people are wonderful people. Some of the people aren't. But that's how the world works. There's bad and good people and everything. But the way they run things and what they expect isn't very palatable for most entrepreneurs, and it doesn't feel good.
Yeah,
so that's
true.
That's my warning. Yeah. Yeah.
What does the perfect business look like to you? I mean, you've been doing this a long time. You've watched them come and go. You had mentioned, a guy doing $4 million a year with $2 million of profit. The kid's school is paid for, 6 months off, like 6 months on, 6 months off. In your mind today, for the entrepreneur out there, if you were to kind of just pencil in what the ideal business look like for land or snow or anything else, even, what do you think that architecture looks like in your mind?
Yeah, and mine might be different than how most people would think about it. Now, I'm almost 60 now. I'm just coming up on my last year of my 50s. And when I look at things now, I can see all the mistakes I made. And I made a lot of them, but I don't regret it because it's given me some pretty good gifts and deep knowledge in this area of building businesses. Now, what I think people don't understand is, so let's just say you do sell your business.
Okay.
So what's the good part about that? So you got a big pile of money there. Now, there's two things you can do. You can put it all and invest it, and then you're going to get a return off of it and build an annuity, right?
Yep.
Or a lot of people go and buy a bunch of assets, and then they get themselves in trouble because, like Brad Pitt said in Fight Club, the things you own. So you got to make sure you got no more money coming in. And if you spend all your money that you're going to put into an investment, then you'd have no annuity to live off of. So what I look at now with businesses is you can do that for yourself by building a really good business that can run itself and that you can take an annuity out of and build it so you don't have to be there that much and give people employment and enjoy your time being around the business and being an owner and being entrepreneurial. And you can go off and do other things, and you can build a business that creates an annuity or cash flow for yourself. So to do that, though, every time a company grows, it causes the owner to have to come back and shepherd that growth, because growth is it takes a lot of energy and it takes a lot of reworking, and everything changes. Like you might have a certain way you do accounting and you do scheduling. And when you grow to a different platform. Now you have to reinvestigate all that. And if anybody's ever tried to implement an ERP system in their business, they understand like new software can take 2 years before everybody figures it out and becomes quite chaotic. So I think when people, like when my business was around 15 million, 12 million, I almost became bored. And I started a few other companies up. I have a real estate company too. And that was probably a good way to go. And I could have just kept it there and just had it made money. But then all of a sudden I go, no, I should go back and now grow the landscape company. It pulls me back in. So right now, what I like is to build a business that's a little bit niche. Like you can't do everything. So I did almost everything you can imagine. And every time I did that, it added complexity back in. So if you can find something you're really good at fairly early, and you just become the best at that, and you build the systems and processes behind it. And if you get bored, you need to ask yourself, is it worth growing this business again? And only you yourself can answer that. So I really now like people that build, let's say like if they do snow. Now snow is a hard one because snow, the tough part about snow is it's weather related.
Yeah.
And if you go all in on snow, it can be a little bit risky. But you know, I met a fellow that all he did was residential grass cutting in Denver. He does like 10 or 12 million dollars a year, and his profit was off the charts. And he gets asked to do everything else. Nope. And he said, I believe that I can make tons of money in residential, and everybody pays up front on credit cards, 3-year contracts. And I looked at that business and I went, this guy makes a lot of money. And he's smart because he's been, you know, lower CapEx in that market. Now when, you know, in the past, I didn't like residential. It was so hard to add revenue growth because it was so incremental. But like he said to me, he goes, my customers never leave. I have a 99% retention rate. So all he has every year, he's just adding on more and more revenue. So, and I'm not saying that's the right business. I'm just saying that he put all his time and effort into just doing that. So he became so good at it, right?
Yep.
You know, so you get good at what you do. And if you do 150 different things, then you're not going to be that good at any one of them. So you have to kind of, you know, go back to that, you know, jack of all trades, master of none. And how can you get really good at some? That's what you have to do. Sometimes when you become the master of something, a lot of people look at it and go say, well, that's boring, or how can somebody do that? But people that have the resolve to just stick it out and do something all the time, every day, and work on it, typically become successful. They might be the person that you see in the gym and you're like, and you know, that's not for everybody, but that guy, you might go, man, I wish I could be like that. But you're not going to be like that guy.
Yeah.
That guy works out 3 hours a day. You know, he won't eat anything that's bad for him. He never has a beer. He's usually as boring as shit. But I'll tell you what, man, the guy is shredded, right? Because he's devoted himself to that. You know, I had a friend that I grew up with, and he worked for me for the longest time. And all he did is at 4 o'clock every day, he went to a dojo and he's martial arts expert. The guy was unbelievable. Like wasn't the biggest guy you'd ever met. This guy, you would not ever want to run into him or touch him or get in a fight with him, because it doesn't matter how big you were done.
Yeah.
And he dedicated his life to it. And I asked him once, I said, how can you do that? And he goes, this is what I do. It's what I've decided that I'm going to do with my life. And at the end of it, I'm going to have no regrets. So, and that's an extreme, I guess, example. But when you bring it back to business, you can't do everything. And you got to find out what you're good at. And then you got to be the best at it. And you can scale within that silo quite well. You know, I think people would appreciate that. If I went back in time, I think I should have just done snow removal in Calgary. And when you drive into Calgary, there's a sign that says, welcome to Calgary, feel the energy. And then right below that would have said, and if you want to have a snow contract here, call Steve, because he's the only one that does snow in Calgary. That's what the second sign should have been. But I got distracted and I wanted to do other things. And I think I would have built a more solid business and wouldn't have went on such a roller coaster ride. I don't regret the roller coaster. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
Nothing better than eating 2 hot dogs and puking up in a garbage can. But, you know, it wasn't smooth, Dave. Let's put it that way. But there were some great stories. And I ended up on the right side of the ledger, so to speak. So, but I really think, businesses that are focused and built, people think like, I'm not kidding you. I think if you had a gardening business and that only pulled weeds and did flower beds in Calgary, it could be a $10 million business.
Wow.
Because there's just so much demand for it.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah. So you started your business 1989. You were about 25 when you did that?
No. So I would have been 23.
23.
Yeah. Yeah.
So right out of college, right out of university.
Well, we wrote a business plan in the third year. There's an MBA level entrepreneurship course that was offered at the University of Calgary.
Okay.
And the University of Calgary, I mean, most schools that you go to, they kind of like prep you to go and work for somebody else, to be honest with you. There's very few schools that when you come out, like they've honed you to be an entrepreneur.
Right.
Because, what are universities funded by? Big companies. And why do they want to fund and donate to the U of C? So they have a pipeline of peons that they can put in cubicles and put a suit on them. Well, it's true.
It's true.
It's a fact. It's a factory to create, employees for companies. And I always knew I didn't want to go and work for somebody else. So, that third year when they offered an entrepreneurship class, I'm like, holy shit, what are they doing? They might put a little bit of thought into some of these hardcore blue suiters if they want to actually go out and start, a landscape company or their own investment firm. So anyway, I took that course, and then in '89, that year at the end of my third year at university, we kind of launched the company. There was myself and another good friend of mine, and my brother and his friend, and we both kind of bought lawn spraying franchises, and we kind of started doing stuff. And then the next year in 1990, we merged them together.
Okay.
But '89 was the first, and then so then I had to go back finish up a few courses, and kind of did it part time. Then that April of 1990 was the full launch of it, but it did start in '89.
Okay.
We were out there cutting grass and doing stuff, shoveling sidewalks.
There you go. That's a good thing to do every day. Get them sidewalks done. Do you still play hockey?
Well, I played last night. It was horrible, Dave. But yeah, I mean, about 2 years ago, I was on 3 teams. I had about 110 games a year. I didn't play them all. I played about 80. And then last year I did a little less. And then this year is probably the least I've played. But I think I've probably had 25 games already this year. But unfortunately, I had a hip replacement in 2018, and the other one's going now. So I can't wheel around like I used to. But it's still fun. And I know you played hockey, Dave. And for people that don't, hockey's kind of a different sport. But there is no way that you can recreate sitting in a dressing room with a bunch of guys, whether it's before the game or after, and having a beer. And it's just a good place for people to be. Good for your mental health, and you build a lot of friendships and a lot of ability to talk about things. And those environments are getting lost. A lot of people don't understand that. You need a place to get together with like-minded people.
Yeah,
I think actually it's getting, a lot of people, and this sounds super funny, but it's getting replaced by pickleball. A lot of people don't understand. My wife started playing pickleball. I didn't know why she liked it so much. And then I went, and really it was just a bunch of ladies getting together, and they'd never done that. They'd never played team sports. Now, and pickleball is not really a team sport, but they're all together. And then they realized, I said, why do you like it? She goes, I don't know if it's the pickleball, or they go for a drink after, or they get together and talk, and they get to meet other people. And I think that's a big part of sports. And that's probably my favorite part about sports that I liked, is that whole thing. But we were a big hockey family growing up. My brother played pro in Europe, and my nephew just signed with the Dallas Stars. So he plays for the Austin Stars down in Texas. Yeah.
That's awesome.
He's getting paid. Yeah, he's making some money. He's doing good. Yeah.
That's good. That's good. Hopefully he'll make it all the way to the top.
Well, it's very competitive for sure.
It is very competitive. What's his name?
Chase Wheatcroft. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. I'm gonna look him up.
He played in the WHL the year Bedard played. Connor Bedard, obviously.
Yep.
And Connor Bedard won the scoring race that year with like 154 points, but he did play 20 games at the World Juniors, and My nephew came second to him with 107. It's like 50 points behind him.
That's okay though, man. That's still a good 107 ain't bad.
No, it's not. It's not. You know how hard it is to get 100 points, Dave. It's not easy.
It's no joke. It's no joke. So what, he's playing center or he's playing wing or something?
Yeah, he's wing. Yeah.
Yeah.
He's a handler. He's got the skills that his dad and me never had, but it was okay. Hockey's changed a lot from when we played as well.
Man, you know what? It has changed a lot. It's fast.
Yeah.
It seems faster, and it's not as tough, like physically. This is just my interpretation. There's not as much.
Yeah.
There's not as much body work. There's not as much stick work. There's much less fighting, and so I think it's easier on the body. This is just how I feel.
Well, I think, hockey can be almost like a metaphor for the world. It's just got softer, a little kinder, and a little more gentle. Now, there's still a lot of injuries. I mean,
Yep.
you can get hurt in hockey. Like, there's so many different ways. Like, you're contained by boards. You can't, like I always say in football, they run out of bounds, they hit the cameraman or whatever. In hockey, when you go out of bounds, there's a wall there and it just smashes you in the face. There's no running out of bounds. There's a puck flying around, and these kids can shoot it. Like, even people that could never shoot 100 miles an hour, almost everybody can now. So you get hit in the ankle, or hopefully not in the face. But it's the mentality around sports in general has changed, and I think it's a good thing. Definitely not as the characterization and the kind of you don't Mike Milbury going into the stands and taking the guy's shoe off and beating him with it. Like, that was good and entertaining shit, and that's not going to happen anymore. And I think that's what people miss about hockey, is that some of the stories and the characters and how all that kind of that folklore and legendary kind of people that played the game. When you look at that 72 Summit Series and stuff, and there was like Phil Esposito was losing it, and Alan Eagleson, like that stuff's never going to happen again.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Hockey still has its place in my heart for sure. And there's interesting stories getting written every day, but they're just different, right?
Yeah, they're different stories. Yeah. I think, one of my favorite guys of all time was Bobby Probert,
Mm-hmm.
I love him, man.
What a guy.
Just a warrior. Yep. On and off the ice, right? Everything that he went through. I watched I don't know if it was a Netflix thing or some kind of series on his life, and just man, I mean, as a hockey player, I can't get through that thing without crying at least 10 times. I mean, you know what I mean? Because it's like I love Bob Probert, man. Just how tough he was, and his battles at home, alcoholism, just everything that he went through, man. To be the player that he needed to be for his team.
Great. There's great players. In Calgary, we went through the Goudreau thing this year, and that was heart wrenching. For the people in Columbus, but also in Calgary, it's been talk about tearjerker.
Yeah,
that was what a story that was. But like Calgary, it's just like, I don't know. It's like every couple of weeks, something comes up and on the news here and another story. And it was a really tough thing for Calgarians to go through.
Yeah. How many people live in Calgary? How big is Calgary?
Well, it's a fun fact. And I might have to double fact. I know it used to be the second biggest city by property lines. So, like I went down to Seattle and I'm like, oh, how many people live here? And it comes up like 650 or something. And I'm like, what? But the GTA of Seattle is what? I think it's the 7th biggest GTA in North America. And there's something like 6 million people in there.
Yeah.
So Calgary, almost all of Calgary is within the city limits, and it's about 1.3, 1.4 million. And then when somebody says, well, what's the GTA of Calgary? Yeah, it's like 1.4 million. Like, there's not, like, you're either in the city and then there's a couple like smaller towns outside, but it's a different place here. Like, it's all contained within the property lines.
Yeah.
Which is a great place to live. I mean, I like it out west. I'm a Western guy and I always have been, and nobody's going to change my mind on that.
Well, there you go. So what's next for you? You like you said, you're 59, you're going to be 60. You've successfully exited multiple businesses. You've had a great career, ton of wisdom, just so many great nuggets of information that you've shared today. Just a phenomenal way that you look at things. I love the approach, the no BS approach that you drive. You're coming into 60. What's the future look like?
Well, I do have some real estate that I'm just managing. Most of that, when we started ULS, I started to build my own buildings.
Okay.
I learned a lot there. And so then I started to build like industrial condo space. So some of those have rolled over. It's not taking up a lot of my time. I have some land deciding what I want to do now. But most of my time now, and where I see kind of myself going, is just doing some consulting. And it seems kind of like, you hear that from old guys, right? Like, oh, what are you doing? I used to be an engineer and now I'm a consultant. But I think for companies, it's a good way for them to get access to somebody that's deep knowledge. And maybe in my situation, because I went from $0 to $100 million and went through building the business, selling it to private equity, exiting, negotiated, 2 buyouts of partners along the way. I think I add a lot of value just for someone to talk to. And it might not be that I can give them the exact key to opening the box, but I think they might say, like, here's all my ideas. And I could say, well, I did those 75% of your ideas, and here's what happened to me. And I think in a lot of cases when I talk to people, that's all they're looking for. They're looking for some clarity in their decision making. And I'm a pretty, as you know, Dave, you've met me, I speak from my heart and I wear it on my sleeve.
Yep.
So I'm not going to tell somebody something that I don't believe. And if I don't know, I'll tell them I don't know. Or I often say, this is what I experienced, and you have to take my adventure into account and see how it fits with yours. Might not be, what I did or where I made mistakes might not happen to you, but maybe gives some clarity so that you pick the right branch in the tree when you get to it, right? So, probably doing some consulting, and I am doing some consulting now. So
yeah,
but I think that's going to probably ramp up a bit more. It's funny, 35 years of being an entrepreneur, when I was finally out of Spectrum and ULS, I just took a year and cleaned things up. I was like, had files and, I had multiple holdcos and stuff, and just taking the time to clean everything up from accounting and paperwork perspective, it just felt good. Like I feel now that everything's put to rest. I've kind of got to that next level where everything's just laid out well. I don't have to worry about anything now. And I can start to, again, put more complexity on top of that. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people make in business. They never take a chance to breathe and clean out the closet. They just keep jamming stuff in there.
Yeah.
And then they all of a sudden realize I've created a pile of shit. Like it's just a shit pile. And it sneaks up on you. Right?
No, it does, man. It does. That's awesome. I'm gonna love to watch that journey and see what you're doing on the consulting side. I think you got just so much to offer. I mean, I just some of the stuff that you shared today. I mean, it was just simple stuff, but it was really powerful. Like some of my notes are, growth takes energy. You don't think about that. Going back and shepherding the business every time you want to grow. I thought that was great. And you get good at what you do, just simple things like that, but that they are going to make a big impact. Build a business that runs on itself. You don't have to be there. It gives you an annuity. It gives you cash flow. And, why do I want to sell? And, what is your life dedicated to? I love the story about, your pal who's doing the karate. Live a life with no regret. Selling to a PE firm is like wearing skinny jeans. The bulges just aren't going to work right for you. I mean, just so many great things. Payment terms, understanding the payment terms. I think so many entrepreneurs, can take from that. Lead a group of leaders. Wow, just all these little nuggets of information that, I've gleaned from, 43 minutes of conversation, I think, to anybody out there, like just chatting with you, just listening to you. But the way in which you do it is phenomenal, because it's not like a consultant's going to ask you how you're doing and they got to massage your feelings a little bit. And this is kind of like straight out of the gun, right? Like, so
yeah,
like you're going to get it. And I think that's mission critical. Like when you're getting going, man, just tell me, hit me between the eyes with it. Let me know, where am I screwing up? I just, so I love the notes that I've
Well,
taken.
I think a lot of people, they want to hear the truth. They want to know, and you can deliver it in a way that's helpful, right? You don't attack the individual, because I made a lot of mistakes myself. So when I talk to somebody, I don't say, "Well, why would you have done that?" It's usually, "Oh, I did that too." I did that too, and then this is what happened. Because that's where true wisdom comes from, is through finding somebody who's had multiple experiences. That, like I said, if you want to learn I always talk to that guy. He said, "Hey, Steve, if you want to learn how to, defend yourself, like, come and talk to me," because that's the guy that would know about that. Like I said, growing a company to $100 million, being on both sides of the fence, on the service side, delivery side, and the equipment side, I've just seen so many things.
Yeah.
And it's just through experiences, and everybody's, and that's the tough thing about life. That's why, and I'm not saying this because I'm getting older, but a lot of people write off older people. But if you really want to learn, find somebody that did what you did that's older, and just ask them, like, how did it go? And what did you learn? And where did you make mistakes? What do you think I should do? Like, you're at a conference and you're a 27-year-old landscaper, and you ask another 27-year-old landscaper.
Yeah.
Well, the questions are going to be probably the same. And you're going to have a friendship there. And it's kind of fun to hang out with them, because you can bond over the fact that maybe you're both single and you're looking for a girlfriend or whatever it is, right? But that guy's going to have just lived the same life really that you have up to then. A few differences. But what about a landscaper that's 72 and did all these different things? Like, that guy is going to know a shitload of stuff.
Yeah,
right?
yes, yeah.
Especially if he was in that industry for 30 or 40 years. So, you got to be open to, finding places where you can get experience from, right? You can find people that are mentors and that can help you along. It's super important.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's fantastic. True wisdom. Yep, comes from the folks who have been there, done that, executed, and you definitely have that. As we bring this in for a close, what final thoughts would you leave with our audience today?
Well, I think that, like I say to a lot of people, if you're having issues and struggling, don't just go for a walk. People don't understand the power of just going for a walk. Like, don't go, I know you like to run, Dave. I kind of followed your quest to do the marathon. That's unbelievable. I've never done one. I was more of a stand-in swinger, not so much of a runner. But there's a lot of times I figured things out by just going for a long walk, and it sounds simple, but you got to get away from the noise, especially if you're entrepreneurial and running a company. You're not going to find it in the office. You're not going to find it when you're under stress. When somebody's under stress, they default to the things they know, and they default to the tools they already have in the toolbox. If you want to get new tools, if you want to think differently, you got to open up your mind and just go for a walk and just think about things. Breathe a little, and it might not just come to you in you might not be able to figure it out then, but it's just going to come to you in a flash. You just have to trust me. It's just a process, and it might take 3 or 4 walks, or sometimes it took me 50 walks, but it's going to be there for you. And the worst thing that could happen is that you could lose a few pounds and feel better, right?
Yeah, it's true. It's true, man. That's phenomenal. I love it. Just go for a walk. Man, I just love the advice. And, I know you got other things to do. I feel like I could talk to you all day. I mean, it's just, you've got so much good wisdom and so much good advice. I mean, I've been doing this for a long time, but I mean, I'm truly, I'm learning little things, just picking up little great tips from you, man. And I'm honored you've been on the show. I'm humbled you've been on the show. And I just, I love learning, and it's just an incredible journey that you've had. So, I thank you so much for being on the show. If anybody out there is listening and they want to reach out to you, I know you're on LinkedIn a little bit. Is LinkedIn a good place for someone to connect with you?
Yeah, or you can just send me an email, and my email is SB Wheatcroft, WHEATCROFT at gmail.com. Simple, Dave. I lost all my other emails. So I had to make one up. I've never had a Gmail account.
There you go. I got
What's
about
Gmail?
15 of them. I gotta get simplified myself. But all right, so now you know how to get a hold of Steve. Reach out to him. Check him out. Talk to him about his consulting and everything that he's got going on. Absolutely phenomenal. This show 9:15 a.m. Pacific Standard Time every Tuesday. We are back. Give us a like, give us a share, drop your comments in the comment box, and we will get back to you. Thank you so much for joining in. And Steve, it's been incredible having you on the show. Thank you, man. Very much appreciated.
Thanks, Dave. It was a pleasure.
Mike Bott from Frost Solutions, one of the owners of the company. What we do is provide a mini weather station to give you a tailored forecast to those particular locations so you know where and when and what to do in those parts of town. There's 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that people can experience tremendous value having a technology like this.
Introducing the all-new Western Enforcer V-Plow. Engineered with all the features, efficiency, and performance of full-size Western V-Plows, built specifically for your half-ton truck. For more information, visit westernplows.com.